Okay, here we go. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It is January 2024. You'd think we'd be in the dead of winter in terms of sales doldrums. We're in the dead of winter, but not the sales doldrums. It's very busy at the dealership right now. Great deals on F-150s, Edge, Mach-E, Explorer. I am your guy at Norman Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. And of course, you can follow Mike at hockeybuzz.com. This is the Monday Spectacular. Yes, Massadakis, you are 100% right. Sunday, other things were going on. My daughter's cheer event in Niagara Falls, and unfortunately, the eulogy for the Bills, not too far away later that night. Michael, I had to bring it up. I was cheering for the Bills. Unfortunately, they could not make it through, and Kansas City needs more success like a hole in the head. We're here to talk about the Maple Leafs, 6-5. In January, 2-2 on their Western swing. It could have been 3-1 if not for one Thatcher Demko standing on his head in Vancouver on Saturday night. But Mike, I know you want to unpack a lot of stuff. We'll talk a little bit about Ryan Reeves and how he's just chomping at the bit to get back in and do nothing. But I'm really encouraged by how the Leafs finished up that Western road swing with a 3-1 win over the Kraken. Look, they're not the greatest team, but Ilya Samsonov gets in, gets a win, hopefully builds some confidence. The Leafs 6-5 in January, 2-2 on the Western road swing, 2 more against the Jets before the All-Star break. So, you know, they're not doing enough to make us full believers, but not quite doing enough to make us disbelieve fully either. Mr. Augello, good evening.
Good evening, Norm. Well, I look at the 4 games as a whole, and, you know, unlike Leafs teams of the past, they beat the teams that they should beat, right? And then they lose to the teams that they not should lose to, but are maybe their equals or a little better, that are a little better than them. But the thing is, in the 2 games that they lost, they were leading. Right. They were, in Vancouver, they came back from a 3-0 deficit and tied the game. Gave up the go-ahead goal late in the second period, tied the game, and then ran into penalty trouble, and they're bad special teams, right? Allowed 2 power play goals, and that was it. I mean, the Edmonton game was winnable, right? And they were up, and they couldn't hold the lead. So, I mean, the defensive flaws of the team, and they were behind 2-0 against Calgary, and then it was the Austin Matthews show, who scores a hat trick and adds an assist. So, yeah, they went 2-2 on a difficult 4-game road trip, but they could have earned more points. And the flaws that we've seen ad nauseum throughout the year are still there.
So they're losing the way we know they lose, right? Getting leads and losing games. Mike, if you could tabulate all of those games that they've given away and compile them, split them down the middle, the Leafs would be probably first in the division. So it's symptomatic of how the Leafs come up with results. I don't see that changing too much due to the fact that the personnel who are, committing these infractions, these mistakes that lead to these losses, and then are also there to piggyback on the losses with wins. It's not going to change. We know there are not going to be any wholesale changes that we can determine are appreciable between now and the trade deadline and beyond. So they are what they are, Mr. Augello. Not to necessarily wave the white flag, but really, you can't cry over spilt milk, and you can't get too upset about the same things we know are going to happen unless you can make changes. And it doesn't appear that change is in the offing anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, over the last less than a week, it's been painfully apparent based on the reporting of people like Elliot Friedman that the Leafs are sort of sending the signal out that they're not going to trade any of their top prospects, Fraser Minton, Easton Cowan. They're not going to trade Matthew Nyes. They're not going to trade their first-round pick for short-term fixes. Right. Now, does that mean that they won't trade him if they get somebody who's got term on their contract or somebody who's on their entry-level contract? No. I mean, they're open to the possibility of adding retainable assets, but they're not going to go down the same road as the last couple of years, thinking that they can plug a hole to improve their playoff chances. There are too many holes to plug. And that is the issue. I've been saying on the convo for most of the season that this is a season of discovery. Find out what you have. Find out what Nyes is. Find out what Bobby McMahon and Pontus Holmberg and Liljegren and Joseph Wall are. You have to take stock of what you have in the organization before you can go out and make the adjustments and make the additions during the summer. Does that mean that they're not going to try? Of course not. Of course they're going to try. But clearly what they've shown, I would say, over the last month is they're simply not good enough.
Yeah.
And I think the management of this team knows it.
This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. OG's Converts, thank you so much for being here. Like the content. Subscribe to the channel. Masset Atkis out of the Motor City / Windsor. Buckle up for more of the same over the next season and a half when Mitch Marner and John Tavares walk so that Tree can rebuild the defense. Are you telling me, Masset and Mike, that we're not going to see this team improve in, real, meaningful, wholesome ways that is going to move this organization forward for another year and a half?
Well, I mean, it all depends on the direction that Treliving takes this team in the summer. It is not under his control when it comes to, well, we want to trade Mitch Marner. Well, Mitch Marner's got a no-move clause. If he doesn't want to be traded, he's not going to be traded. We've talked about that. We'll talk about that until July 1st. It's not going to change. Now, if there's an opportunity out there for him to get traded and get an 8th year or get $13 million, fine. I don't think that there is no team that's going to give them tangible assets for a guy who's 1 year away. Maybe it's a guy who they sign and trade, but I don't see it. I don't know. It's possible, and I've had people tell me that they think that's going to happen, but I don't buy it. I believe that Marner wants to stay here, even if the organization says, "Well, we really don't want you, Mitch." Well, okay, that's great.
Wow.
Well, I'll go on my own volition in the summer of 2025, and I'll screw you.
How many teams do you think would be lined up to take number 16?
I think there would be a sizable number of teams, maybe 10 teams, but it all depends on what the Leafs would be asking and whether Marner wants to go there. In the end, he's got the whip hand. He can say, I want to go to Chicago.
Fundamentally, would they want a player like him?
Sure. A lot of teams need scoring,
Right.
but the thing is, he'll be 27, 28. I mean, the 8-year deal is going to be something that would scare some people off.
Right.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, this league is run on scoring, and he's an offensive creator.
Mm-hmm.
But
the interesting thing about Mitch Marner, people are down on him now. One, William Nylander's having the season of a lifetime, so there's that. Two, fans haven't forgotten that Mitch really didn't look too good against the Panthers last spring. 3, it's just kind of Mitch Marner. He's susceptible to some, I wouldn't say boneheaded defensive plays, but he's out there doing a lot of things, and people think he gives away the puck and he's soft on the puck. A lot of that ill will towards this guy would be eradicated with Mitch being center and the focal point to a 2-3 round playoff run where he's put up a ton of points and produces in the playoffs. So for as intelligent as we believe we are as fans and how we see the big picture and we understand things, we all know that we're as schizophrenic as the next. And if Mitch were to have an amazing playoff run and help lead this team to where it hasn't been, at least when it comes to this group and the way that these 4 guys have fronted it, you'd see a lot of mentalities change. And that, of course, would also come with the expectation that this guy's going to make way more money than a lot of people think he truly deserves. So that could throw another wrench into how things transpire over the next season and a bit when it comes to Mitch Marner and this team loosening itself from, the grip that the top four guys have on a lot of the money that the team has allocated to work with. Spike 11, we've seen enough. This team should sell. Trade Bertuzzi, Domi, and Brody for picks. Wouldn't that be something? I can't see it.
Brody has no move clause, so unless he wants to go somewhere, he's not going to go anywhere. Now, maybe he wants to make an impression going into unrestricted free agency if he knows the Leafs are not going to sign him, so he might waive if he goes someplace he wants to go. Maybe he wants to go back to Boston. Who knows? But that'll mitigate what they get back. Domi's got 4 goals or 6. He doesn't have many goals. It's in single.
What was he brought in to do? Was he brought in to do more than he's doing right now? Because there are nights he shines pretty brightly, and then others he goes away. I'd like to see him be a little more consistent. But what more were we expecting from Domi?
I think Domi was brought in to be a winger, and they've moved him to center because he wasn't playing particularly well on the wing. So, defensively, he's not great up the middle. That's the reason why most of the last half of his career he's played on the wing. He played center in Chicago because Chicago was trying to finish in last place and draft Connor Bedard. Not to say he was the cause of that. He actually played good in Chicago, and he played good in Dallas. But I'm just saying they had holes up the middle, and they didn't really care whether he was defensively. Brody, $5 million salary cap. Hit. Contenders might want him. The thing is, the Leafs, I can't see the Leafs dumping. I just, where I see them is not adding, and that's a completely different thing. Michael Matthew in the chat going back on the Marner discussion saying if they don't play Marner, he'll want to be traded. They're not going to do that. He is one of their top forwards. If in the offseason he says, well, I want $13 million. And the Leafs say, well, no, we're not going to pay you that. Then he say, okay, well, I'll play out my last year and I'll leave. They're not going to sit him. They still want to have success. They still want to win in the playoffs. They're not going to be able to force him to waive his no move clause. So that's just, I'm sorry.
That is just so vindictive. Mike, why do you hate Marner so much? Like, it's so personal. It's where we're at.
And, he'll probably be one of these guys who when Marner leaves, he'll be like, we missed number 16. So
I doubt that. I think Mike's been down the road of fandom many a year. I don't think he's going to change his tact or his the impression he has of guys like Mitch Marner, considering where he is on the timeline of being a fan of this team. Mike, you do you. I just want to see these boys win as a group. I just don't know the way this group is composed and put together, and the financial implications that are tied to it, that this is the group that's going to be able to do it. I not only do I think that, I truly believe that things need to change. What's fearful, Mike, for a lot of people, and is a cause of concern for me, is that it appears that undoing a lot of what's tying this or holding this team back and tying it up financially is going to take some time. And as if we haven't waited long enough to, and supported this group long enough to, hopefully be in a position where sooner rather than later, we can have a team that's going to push forward and make some serious strides. Forget the regular season, in the postseason. And waiting even longer, that's a tough pill to swallow for many people.
Well, we know that it's a tough pill to swallow in terms of another year wasted, but the clock is ticking. You mentioned the Bills. Josh Allen is 27 years old. There's a finite amount of time that you have as, in your prime as an NFL quarterback. It's the same in the NHL. Austin Matthews, William Nylander's 27. Austin Matthews is 26, I believe. You blink and he'll be 30. It's like you need to strike while the iron is hot in terms of these guys being in their prime. And that is the issue here. When was the time to make the move of busting up the core four or making a move? It was when either Mitch Marner had no move clause, which was before July 1st, or before William Nylander signed the extension, or before the season. Both of those are gone.
Let me throw something out here. Spike 11, give Marner the Reeves treatment. Okay, again, coming to his defense in the slightest of ways. 20 goals. Nylander has, 22, 23 goals. Marner has 51 points in 45 games. Why are we wanting to bench him? For what? Hatred for the guy? Like, if you want to trade him and get something for him, don't you want to be playing peak? Don't you want to be him to come out of that, mid-level type of guy you believe he is and be something greater so that the Leafs can showcase him and that, he can improve his worth? Like, I'm sure, Spike, you suggest this in jest. Like, come on. Like, what the hell?
Well, I mean, I think what a lot of the fans see is that they're coming to a crossroads when it comes to paying this core four group all this money.
Mm-hmm.
They're powerless in a sense because Nylander and Matthews' contract kick in on July 1st. There's an overlap of a year, and they're going to be paying $47 million to four players. They have no control over this. If one of these players, John Tavares is not waiving his no move clause. It's not happening. He was asked it last year. He's not waiving it.
Right.
Mitch Marner might do it, but I seriously doubt it.
Right.
So if that's not the case,
it's going to have to be on terms that he not only approves of, but absolutely loves and is all for. And those terms may not benefit the Maple Leafs. A lot of his detractors hope it will by expediting this guy's departure from Toronto.
Well, and on top of that, if they have to negotiate a sign and trade, or if they're, if it's limited in terms of, I want to go to three teams. Well, do you think those three teams are going to give, face value? They're not. You're going to be getting, 60 cents on the dollar, and then people will be pissed off at that. So it's like, there's no pleasing everybody. Right. And where I'm fearful is it's a question of, do we re-sign them or do we let them walk? And they'll do the same thing that they did with Nylander, and then all they're doing is reallocating the money that they might be saving on a new Tavares contract and giving it to Marner, and nothing.
So back in the days when the jury was still out on Nylander for a lot of fans, he'd go missing for games on end, get benched. People had justification. With Marner, probably has another 90-point season. Not as many as Nylander. I hope Nylander is in the conversation for just for shits and giggles. It's really like you really don't have a lot of ammo to discredit Marner for much, other than him, along with his counterparts and his colleagues. Most of them don't really show up for the playoffs, right? So it's just crazy, the vitriol towards this guy. Yeah, sure. I mean, socially can be annoying, and he's can leave a little bit to be desired defensively compared to the way he used to play defensively. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. But the amount of points this guy puts up, I mean, he's been awesome in the last 2 weeks. Akuma's deception. I shit on Marner, but these takes are getting silly. Marner is an elite player. Akuma's deception adds that he's been amazing the last 2 weeks. And we're not just here to defend Marner because we want him to retire a Maple Leaf. It's just, the team is not composed properly. Marner is a symptom of that. Marner is there's the money he makes and the potential of money he makes, and the fact that a lot of it's now redevoted to, the guys everybody loves, Nylander and Matthews. He's kind of central to the argument over why this team needs to be dismantled. Fair enough, but the man's producing on the point sheet. He's producing 51 points in 45 games, 20 goals. That's more goals than he usually is on pace for. So I don't know. And at the same time, we hate the guy. He continues to put up points. And what happens if he does well in the playoffs then? Can you learn to love him then? And then how does that complicate the the way the Leafs are going to have to pay this cat or move him going forward. Ryan Reeves, Mike, he's raring to go. He can't wait to get back in there and do his part for 4 minutes a game and, get no points, throw no hits, punch no one in the face.
Well, Luke Fox from Sportsnet had an interview with Reeves, or a piece where he interviewed Reeves, and he indicated that he's been ready for a couple weeks and he's raring to go to come off IR. He, in a way, may have thrown the Leafs under the bus here, because if you're healthy enough, you're not supposed to be on IR. Now, he's not on LTIR, and a lot of teams sort of use IR as a method of, and he was traveling with the team, so as a method of carrying an extra player, especially on a West Coast road trip. But the problem here is Ryan Reeves isn't very good. He sucks. He's terrible. He's a liability. He's been a liability for most of this season. I think his plus minus is minus 11 or 12, and the guy is playing 6-7 minutes a night. He's terrible. Right. And he can't even do the job that he was brought in to do. Guys who are playing significant minutes, like Simone Benoit, who's hitting and fighting, and Jake McCabe, who's fighting and defending his teammates. Players who play regularly can be the guys who do the team toughness role. A guy who plays 4, 5, 6 minutes can't keep up with the pace of play, and as a liability out there, they cannot play. Now, if the Leafs, as I know that Elliot Friedman talked about on his most recent podcast, if this article spurs them to have to make a move on him, I hope that they activate him and they waive him, because then they send him down to the Marlies and where he belongs. And he is, they open up about $1 million and $1.1 million in cap space, and they can use that on somebody who can actually play.
That's a pretty cautious signing, wasn't it, though, Mike? They kind of, you forecast this would happen. The way they've structured the deal, the amount they paid him, did they have an inkling that this may occur as well? And I'm talking about management.
They may have seen it a year down the road, because apparently he was offered a 2-year deal from Minnesota, and the Leafs offered him a 3rd year. Does this sound like Patrick Marleau? But it's happened a lot quicker, and really he has not had the desired effect. Great, he chirps up Corey Perry. He fights Arbor Jackeye and gets waxed. It's like he's honestly, he's very, other than being a DJ in the locker room, he's pretty much useless. So I mean, I honestly, it's like I didn't like the signing from the very beginning, and the way he has played has just illustrated that more and more with each game. So if they have to activate him, fine. Place him on waivers. Nobody's claiming him because he's got 2 more years left in his contract, and let him go down to the Marlies. If he doesn't want to report, fine. But honestly, playing him or carrying him on the roster as an extra forward, all he's doing is eating up cap space and eating up the opportunity of somebody else who could be on that roster.
All right, here's the Kumis deception again. Serious question: who's a better skater? Oh, jeez, Reeves or John? Why are you trolling Kumis? Come on,
that is just ridiculous. I mean,
I know. I mean, again, we love our stars, and then we shit on our stars, and the stars take the brunt of the heat and the brunt of the abuse when things aren't going right with the club. And things really haven't gone right with this club since it was bounced from the 2nd round of the Stanley Cup playoffs last spring. Thing with Ryan Reeves, okay, he draws back in. What does he do? Like, if the team is struggling, how does Ryan Reeves ramp it up and get the guys going and do something that's going to lend to a momentum shift, right? And if the team is doing well, how does he further that success? He's just kind of a guy, and we're talking about him now because there have been some reports on his whereabouts, and him waiting with bated breath to get back in to do what. But you forecast this was coming, Mike. I think you're even surprised that he's just become so inept and so irrelevant so soon. Last couple of words. Can you give me some positive feedback and a bit of love and kindness and tenderness for Ilya Samsonov and
Oh yeah,
his win last night? That's a big damn deal for him.
I was very happy to see it. Now, it was his first victory since December the 9th.
Long time.
And that was a shutout against Nashville, and he faced 18 shots. He faced 17.
Oh, keep it under 20, and he's good.
Right, I mean, and he did make a few nice saves, so I give him credit. And
he needed it, man.
But it's got to be right now. It's got to be a low event game for a guy who's psyche is very fragile. Now, if he builds some confidence, then he could get back to where he was. I still think. I mean, obviously the bubble has sort of burst on Martin Jones, but that was because they played him 11 of the last 12. I mean, they've really leaned on him, and they've had to because Samsonov was not dependable, and they didn't want to play Hildeby, and Wall's hurt. So now, I don't think Wall's going to be back until after the All-Star break. I know he's skating, but skating and being able to go into the splits and do what he has to do as a goaltender with a high ankle sprain are two completely different things. So, I think that it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing that Samsonov played well, but right now I'm not ready. He may play in the first game against Winnipeg, but right now I wouldn't still bet on him being the number one once Joseph Woll comes back.
And when is that?
I would say maybe a week after the All-Star break. I mean, like I said, he's skating right now, but I mean, it doesn't sound like he's doing much in terms of, I don't know. I haven't been at practice recently, so I don't know what he's doing, but it doesn't sound like he is close.
So here's the thing about Joseph Woll, other than a kick in the pants spiritually and just a reaction to a teammate overcoming an injury and feeling good about that. How is he going to further the cause for the team, Mike? Because other than the last few times that Ilya Samsonov's completely gone pear-shaped, when can we say a goaltender was solely responsible for a Leafs loss?
Well, I mean, most of the last 3 or 4 starts that Samsonov played, he was responsible for the loss.
Okay. But he won last night. Low event games are good for him. And a lot of that is incumbent upon the defense to do its job and or have the offense just have an anemic kind of night in the offense against, right? So, but what I'm saying, though, is I don't know how this team's fortunes just changed dramatically because Joseph Woll's between the pipes.
Well, right now he's the best goaltender that they have.
So maybe he makes the extra save.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is the thing. Like I've been saying, this is a year of discovery. We want to see whether Joseph Woll can be the number one. Right. Do we know for sure he's going to be the number one? No, but could he be the number one?
Right.
And if he is the number one, then you have a number one goaltender next year making less than $800,000, which is an important thing because, they're going to need another goaltender. They're not going to be able to spend a ton of money on the other goaltender. Maybe it'll be Martin Jones and Woll plays 50 games and Martin Jones plays 32. Who knows? I mean, right now, but you have to find out through the rest of the season and into the playoffs whether he can do the job. That is the most important thing. Don't go back to Samsonov in a playoff scenario thinking you can win the Stanley Cup. No, the most important thing between the pipes is to find out whether Joseph Woll can do the job.
So Leafs go into the playoffs. It's Woll and Jones.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether they think Samsonov has regained his confidence enough to be.
Wow, he's gonna have to find it quick because it's late January already. April's going to be here in no time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, but, and this is going to be a tight race. I mean, right now they're battling for third spot in the Atlantic or the wild card. I mean, they cannot bleed points, which is part of the thing that I said in the two losses. They were leading against Edmonton and they were tied in the third period against Vancouver and came up with a big goose egg. So, you can say 2-2 on a road trip, on a tough road trip is acceptable, but you cannot surrender 1 point.
Well, that Vancouver game, look, Vancouver is a really good team.
Yep.
The Leafs go 0 for 5 on the power play. Thatcher Demko stands on his head throughout the night. Jones gives up a couple of goals on, deflections and tips in front of the net with traffic in places that guys should be boxed out in. And instead, they're not. And it's super unfortunate. OG's Converts, youtube.com/Leafs Convo/community. That's where you can chat with me. I'm usually posting, every night or every second night just about games. I've got polls going. You got to like the content, subscribe to the channel so you can stay engaged with us even when we are not doing shows. A home and home with the Jets, Mike, before the All-Star game in Toronto. The Jets are just ridiculous. If we hope and get a split with Winnipeg, is that a successful back-to-back and home with the Jets when all is said and done? Last word to you.
You'd like 3 or 4 points, but against a team that's one of the best in the NHL right now, I think you'd take a split and then, you go into the All-Star break. And unfortunately, I mean, it's in Toronto, so there's no travel involved, but you're going to have 4 of the core 5 playing in the All-Star game, which means they get no rest for the stretch run. I know it'll be entertaining for the fans, but I think people who are Leaf fans are more interested in what the team does in the postseason and not during the All-Star break.
Donnie does dishes. If the Leafs lose both, do we see Keefe after the All-Star break?
No.
I don't know. I mean, if the Leafs lose 6, 7, 8 in a row, he gets gassed. I just don't know if they're that bad. If they're going to lose that many in a row. They always seem to, after a shit show of a game, they seem to come through. And that's the thing. Not quite enough to make us full believers. Not quite enough to make us disbelievers either. So that's what keeps us hanging on. Who the hell knows? We kind of have a feeling how it's all going to end. But in the meantime, we're Leafs fans. What else the hell are we going to do? Mike, Tyler Bass. What are you going to 44 yards into the wind? I mean, it was a tough situation to be in. His team really didn't do a lot of, things they needed to do to put themselves in a position to finally unseat the Chiefs. And then it's all rests upon the foot of Tyler Bass, and he can't deliver. And I felt that pain last night. You?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, plastic bag. We love him. Keefe is the most winning coach in Leafs history. How aren't you a believer?
I mean, I do not think that the reason for the Leafs' mediocrity over the last few years has been Sheldon Keefe. But at a certain point, a coach gets tuned out. I don't think they've tuned him out, but at a certain point, Sheldon Keefe is not going to be the coach of the Maple Leafs. I mean, You saw what happened with the Islanders. They fired Lane Lambert after it was less than 2 years, and they fired Patrick Waugh. I mean, at a certain point, Brad Treliving is probably going to have to make a coaching change. So whether it's going to be this year, no, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be in the offseason. They gave him a contract extension. They were tired as an organization. They were tired of paying for Mike Babcock for 4 years after they fired him. They don't want to go down that road again. So I don't think don't hold your breath that they're going to fire Sheldon Keefe.
A big thanks to everybody who's watching the show in a rerun capacity on YouTube. Like the content, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about what we're doing. We really do appreciate your support. In the meantime, Mike, you'll get over that Bills loss, and we'll get looking forward to the next Leafs game. It's back-to-back with the Jets before the All-Star break, and imagine they got 3 or 4 points from a team like the Jets, the way they're playing right now. That would be amazing in and of itself, but we'll take it one game at a time. OG's Converts, have a great night. Mr. Augello, we'll talk to you soon. The Leafs Convo is out.